Now you're the world champion. Do you feel like you have an agenda, or that it's almost like being Miss World or something? You're being trotted out all these places. Do you feel like you have to
Miss World.
say
I've
things
never been
about
called
poker?
that before.
In the poker world, you are Mr. World.
How about Mr. Universe? That's like the Arnold Schwarzenegger title. I like that
That's
one
fun.
better. Okay. No, I don't feel like I have anything I have to prove, but I would like to go on and win more tournaments and make it apparent that I am a good player rather than someone who just played decent and got lucky for a week. But I don't feel any emotional need to prove myself. I mean, before the World Series, I was a winning poker player in tournaments and in cash games, and I had already gotten to the point where I was playing in bigger games than 98% of the poker players out there. And since the World Series, I've made money playing, in even bigger cash games.
Can you still get excited about poker?
Has something changed? Or?
I like poker. So, yes, I still enjoy playing. It's not like it's become a chore or a job, even though now it is my job. My primary job is to represent poker stars, in the sense that's what they pay me for. But still, it's also my job at the same time to win money in tournaments, to win money in the side games. Maybe it's because I'm not playing 40 hours a week. Given the other things that come along with winning the World Series now, I'm busy giving interviews. I'm busy looking at endorsement deals. I'm writing a book for 2+2. I'm, answering emails and snail mails and stuff constantly. So
You've
it's
got
like
a website as well you're starting, right?
yeah, and I'm starting fossilmanpoker.com as well. So I'm sure that's going to generate more email from fans that, you want to take time to answer all those emails, even if you don't have it. I'll be selling stuff. I've got to be posting on there constantly to keep my calendar updated, because that's one of the things on the website is you can kind of see, where's Greg going to be? Is he going to be coming to a casino near me to play a tournament or an appearance? I need to write up little trip reports once or twice a week, tell people what I've been doing.
But you had a support network of backers. Is that good for poker? How'd that work?
I hadn't thought of whether it's good for poker or not. I don't see why it would be bad for poker. Certainly it's something a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people are like, why would you have backers? I heard you won your seat on Poker Stars. So they're thinking, you've already won your seat. You don't need people to put you in. But of course, just because you've won your seat doesn't mean you don't want to lock up some profit by selling off pieces of yourself. But in my case, though, I had made a deal with my wife something like 9 or 10 years ago, and she was a little concerned. This is back, early in my poker career, and I was first getting seriously interested in it. And in her mind then, it was just gambling. And gambling was a bad thing, and you were sure to lose eventually, and if you did it too much, you were going to bankrupt yourself and your family.
Yeah.
So we made a deal that I would take $1,000, and that was my poker bankroll, and that I would never supplement it with money from my job or our savings, investments, or anything like that. And if I lost the money, I would quit playing forever. So I built my bankroll up over the years, and that's how I moved from like $3 and $6 limit games to $150, $300. And along the way, things had happened, like I'd won a big tournament when we first moved to Foxwoods, to Connecticut, and there was the down payment we needed for the house we wanted to buy, and things of this nature. And I had built my bankroll up and was playing like $150, $300, and then I spent a bunch of it. I had more than I needed, and I spent a lot of it on our house. And then I hit one of the worst losing streaks I've ever had, and lost about $30,000 or $40,000 after spending like $20,000. And all of a sudden now my bankroll was small enough that I couldn't afford to play in the bigger games at Foxwoods or to travel to the World Series and things like that to play in $10,000 tournaments. And I wanted to still play in those big tournaments, and I knew that I could make more money in the 75-150 mixed game at Foxwoods than I could in the 20-40 Hold'em game. So I used the fact that I have a strong reputation on these internet groups, and I posted on RGP and on 2+2, and I said, here's the deal. I'm selling shares of myself, $500 per share. I'm going to buy about 30 shares. I want to raise about 60 shares from other people, and if I find enough people who want to do this, you'll all own a percentage of me
And it was very detailed, wasn't it? There was travel expenses.
Oh
and,
yeah, we ended up with a full like 4 or 5 page contract, spelling it all out. I mean, I was limited as to how high I could play. You know, I could use my discretion to play what kind of games or tournaments I wanted, but based upon the current size of the team bankroll, there was a maximum sized limit game and a maximum sized pot limit or no limit game that I was allowed to play in. There was a limit similarly on the internet games that I could play. You know, and if the bankroll were to, if I had won enough money to double the bankroll, I could double the size of games I was playing in as well. And I raised about $30,000, about 60 shares from a variety of people, everywhere from 1 to 10 shares per person. And they had the piece of me for that was like the second half of 2002. And then the deal ended at the end of 2002. And a couple of people cashed out, but most people wanted to keep going. And we did another deal for the first half of 2003. We did a third deal for the second half of 2003. And then we finally did the fourth deal that lasted through the end of the World Series in 2004. And the share prices went from 500 to 488 at the end of the first deal, to 550 to a little over 600 to 36,000.
Wow.
So the guy with 10 shares was pretty happy. He got I wired him $360,000.
That's great.
You mentioned losing streak, but you never have used the words luck or bad luck.
What is your relationship to it?
Well, luck is a word I will use, but I only use it to describe the past. So actually that losing streak that led me to want to solicit backing, and similarly, I had actually a big losing streak before the World Series in 2004. When I look back at those, I attribute the majority of those losing streaks to just bad luck, just getting dealt bad cards at the wrong time. You know, my typical, playing session, I would go home and I'd be rethinking my hands, and I would say, well, man, you ended up stuck this much, and that's about 2 regular-sized pots for this game. And boy, there were at least 5 pots left, that session where someone only had 1 or 2 cards to beat you with, and they did it. So it's like, you win a couple of those pots that you got unlucky 5, 6 times. Like if I could have 2 of those back, I'd be even. If I could have 3 of those back, that still seems a bit unlucky, and I'd be ahead for the night. So I was, very easily able to say that it was mostly bad luck. And statistically, it's not that unlikely to run into a streak like that, even for a few months when you're only playing, part-time, like I am. I've known players that are full-time pros that play 40 or more hours a week, and they've had, 6-month losing streaks after making money at it and supporting themselves for 10 years.
But is that statistically going to happen? Do you think poker players understand luck correctly?
No, most don't. Most people really don't understand. One of the things that actually did a lot to teach me is I used to do a lot of blackjack. I used to be a card counter when I was in school before I got into poker. And when I was first out of school, I had a job in Chicago, and I was looking at the blackjack games that were available in the riverboats around Chicago. And I had a computer program that you would input the card counting system and the betting system you were going to use, and it would, you'd also put in the rules for that casino, how many decks, how deep did they tend to deal before they would shuffle up the decks.
It would tell you your edge.
And so, it would then play millions of hands for you and tell you how you'd done. And that's, of course, assuming that you did your system perfectly, which you're not going to do in practice yourself. You're going to make some mistakes. And I had run this software one night, and it had been running for just an hour or two, and it had gotten to about 1 million hands. And I looked at the results at that point, and my hypothetical self was losing like $40,000 after 1 million hands. And I thought, well, I guess I'm not going to be able to make any money at that casino. But I let the simulation continue to run all night long until it got to like 8 or 10 million hands when I woke up in the morning. In the morning, I was ahead, and I had made a reasonable $30 or $40 an hour over those like 8 or 10 million hands. What can I say? I just in other words, the player was unlucky for the first 1 million hands.
Lucky it was on the computer.
But the edge was so small that it didn't take much to go from a loser to a winner. Because it ended up being the edge the player had in that particular game was something like 15 hundredths of 1%. advantage. So it was so small that you're just, you're seeing little things like this, but because you're playing millions of hands, the dollars are, going like that.
Your wife came out for the final table.
Was that? Did you say, "Honey, I'm going to win it. Get out here"? Or
Well, I didn't say, "Honey, I'm going to win it," but certainly it was. I got a great chance of winning. I may even have said, I think I might win, but the way I tend to think of things is statistically, and that's not the way she thinks of things. So you can't talk as a mathematician to my wife.
but has her perception of poker evolved, and has it changed since the World Series win?
Oh, dramatically. I mean, it's changed. It changed a lot throughout these years, and then this has changed it even more. When we first moved to Connecticut, we didn't have enough money for a down payment on the house that we wanted to buy, and then we'd only been living there a couple of weeks, and it was time for the World Poker Finals, and I entered the $500 limit hold'em tournament. I won $22,000, and it's like, okay, bam, we can buy the house we wanted. And so her, attitude about poker improved dramatically with that win. And then subsequent to that, there were other tournament wins where I would get a big infusion of cash into my bankroll, and then I would spend it on her or the house or the family.
What about the rest of your family? You have you have daughters? Or
I have one daughter. Her name's Sophie, and she's 7 or 8 now. And
do you tell her Daddy's a poker player?
Oh, actually, we've played poker together for years. Ever since she was maybe about 5 years old, we will play heads-up, no-limit, 5-card stud tournaments. And she wins about 20% of them.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty fast structure.
A player in the making.
My thanks to the champ, Greg Raymer. Off to shuffle now. We'll see you next time.